Welcome back to Cambridge Inside Out, Part 2.
And I'm still Robert Winters.
And I'm Judy Nathans.
So we kind of eked our way through a part of our big old list
Right.
in the first half hour here. And we'll carry on now. One of the other items that was, I think, characterized a fair amount of the last 2 years were what I like to call bans, ordinances, and city service changes in city services. So, Judy, you actually know probably more about this than I.
Let me show the first ban that actually is going into effect in March. Can you just put that in there? Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, so this is effective, as you see, March 31st this year, and it's bring your own bag, and there will be, again, I think it's up to the business, but there will be a 10-cent charge on all checkout bags.
So if you don't bring your bag.
If you don't bring your bags. And it looks like it's okay to have a plastic bag the vendor can buy, but if you notice, it looks like it's one of those compostable types.
I see.
Which, my pet peeve about that is that, well, it can't be recycled then in a regular recycled plastic bag thing. It has to be composted, but
right.
That's for another day. But anyway, so that will go in effect then. And again, it's only that really thin ply one.
Okay.
Yeah, we can go back to us.
Right.
So,
so that, I think the ordinance that made that happen passed, but it must have been this past March or so?
Right, because it's a year to and let vendors adjust. Again, I don't know how it's going to be enforced.
So if you're not using reusable bags now, you better stock up and get them ready for March.
You could bring your own plastic bag. They're not going to arrest you for using a plastic bag. It's just that you're not going to, if you want one, you have to pay for it.
Right now I have 2 from David Marr. As part of the re-election campaign, I have a Toomey bag. I think I have a Denise Simmons bag.
But I bet they're heavier ply.
They're actually pretty good. They're pretty good. Actually,
you can use those.
I remember in it was a 2013 election, the Sierra Club people were giving out some bags, and Tim Toomey was giving out bags.
Not plastic bags, though.
No, these were reusable, good, solid bags. And the Toomey bags were better than the Sierra Club bags.
Wow, and also once those other ones, the argument against the reusables, what do you do with it once it wears itself out? But that's another thing. So that is going into effect. We'll see, and then.
So that's the checkout bag ordinance.
Right. Well, bring your own bag ordinance.
So
they changed it to.
We like to argue about the names of things here in Cambridge.
I'd be curious to see what happens because Whole Foods has been giving out paper bags forever, it seems.
Right.
Because they changed.
Now,
so they have the prerogative to charge now, but I don't know if they will. I have a feeling they won't.
Now, there's also somewhere along the line they passed a polystyrene.
That one, that needs work. And
needs work, but they passed it.
They passed it because, frankly, because I think it was an election year, and things got. If you really look at that meeting that you went to, and I realized I was away. Otherwise, I would have been there. I think.
Yeah, honestly, there was a guy from the Sierra Club there who was pretty much writing it on the floor, and they were okaying it during committee.
I know, and all the attachments refer to Sierra Club attachments.
Yeah, the thing is that I think a lot of things like certain polystyrene bags or something like that can be a problem.
No, polystyrene items.
Polystyrene.
Well, now we have the expanded polystyrene, and then there's this new oriented something polystyrene, and it's now include like red Solo cups. The people that which we've been taking in the single stream for a long time.
Yeah.
And apparently that is this other kind of styrene because
it's polystyrene.
Again, because of all, I understand the hormone inducement type stuff.
But that's really some only when it's like
that's
hot
on one
liquids.
end. Yeah. But the other end is that we've been recycling a lot of these plastics. Right. Not the puffy, that I like to call it the puffy styrofoam.
Right.
And we haven't come up with, well, again, what's the substitute? And the schools are using them because we've been recycling them in a program that Boston's had for years and years, over 20 years.
Yeah, I think it's an example of a city council sort of jumping, passing the rule. And there was plenty of arguments to be given about why they should be a little more thoughtful on this.
And the last thing I'm going to say about it, because I read it carefully, was the first attachment refers to a March 19th, 2013 meeting. Recommendation by the Recycling Advisory Committee, which I think you were still a member then. And if you look at it carefully, they're going to look into some things. they didn't come up with any strict recommendation,
Right.
and yet that was used by, it looks like Counselor Chung, as evidence of this.
A justification for it, right?
There's a lot of
So
problems.
that's a case of the
Yes.
council jumping the gun. In my opinion,
Right.
the council, the outgoing council now, is one
Yeah.
that has been prone to, if it moves, ban it. I mean, it's been very
Very bad.
comfortable
I don't like it.
restricting a lot of things.
Yeah.
I at one council meeting, I think I offended at least one councilor when I
Mm-hmm.
said this seems like we're entering a period of the new Puritanism, where the local
Yes.
legislature just wants to dictate.
Yes.
And
And they compare it to
all
Brooklyn,
things.
all those places, but I think there's some I'm going to do a little more my own research, and maybe we'll get somebody in here to talk about it. But that would be effective a year from October 19th, theoretically, because that's when it passed.
Some people might find this
Yeah.
strange. We both served on this.
Yeah.
Served on the
The
recycling
same-
advisory
right.
committee for
Yeah.
many years.
Yeah.
But within the recycling community, there are serious questions about
Exactly.
what's the right course of action, and it's
In
not
order
always
to achieve zero
Yeah,
waste
it's
or
not-
whatever,
it's
and it
not
isn't
always the
always
obvious
banned.
things.
No, it isn't. Right.
sometimes things that you think are the sort of the best green alternative
Right.
turns out not to be. I mean,
Yeah.
perfectly great example on a federal level was things like biofuels, where they were making corn
yeah.
crops, and turns out that the net environmental effect in terms of greenhouse gases ends up being a net loser.
Because it was worse for the environment.
Yeah, I think maybe it was the ethanol
Right.
lobby or whatever. So things that are often
And
seen.
some people didn't like a food product being used for fuel either.
Right.
That was the other thing.
Right, but the thing is, these
Right.
things are a little more complicated
Right.
than some people.
Much more,
are
and then
aware.
the whole, again, the biodegradability of other items it only works if it's a closed loop system, and we don't have that yet.
Right. Now, on the bright side,
Is the curbside compost.
Curbside Organics Collection, which began
did
as a
start, yeah.
pilot program in
Right.
a portion of the North Cambridge, and now is expanded
Right.
to the full
For Monday
daily,
route.
the Monday
Route,
collection route.
Right, started in October 12th or 19th, something like that,
Yeah.
and they're getting a lot of participation. It's still basically voluntary. Everyone was given a bin, but not everyone's using it.
But I know a lot of
Yeah.
people up there. They've been sort of chattering. They're kind of liking this
Good.
new thing. And
All
so, I hope that all works out.
Yeah, and maybe one of these days we'll have someone in to talk about
Yeah.
that, because
Yes, definitely. I mean, I always have concerns about it. Does it end up being
more
costing?
transportation.
Yeah.
Because there's a separate truck.
Yeah.
There's issues.
Yeah, when you really factor in all of
Right.
everything that's involved in a program
Right.
like this,
Right.
it could end up
Right.
with transportation costs and other
You
things.
have to look at, as they say,
citing-
the life cycle assessment.
Yeah, it's
the
not
whole
it's,
thing.
It's
You don't
not
look at
always
just-
so easy, but
Right.
generally speaking, I think organics collection is sort of a positive step. and
40%
let's hope it works
of
out.
waste is food.
Yeah.
Food waste goes in,
Yeah.
thrown out. So yes,
Yeah.
that's a positive step.
So
Okay.
so there's a good thing,
Yeah.
But then again, in the next 2 years,
Right.
are we gonna see a reintroduction of that order we saw in New York and in here to ban
Well, that was
large
banning.
soda drinks?
Oh right. Well, they did just recently ban or stopping the polystyrene
Yeah,
in New York.
in New York. I think.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Be careful what you wish for. So
Yeah,
we'll have to
yeah.
see. Okay.
But so maybe
We'll
pretty soon
follow
it'll
up
be
on that.
illegal for me to get a burger. Yeah. We'll
right.
see.
In
Hope not.
at least in Cambridge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, one other thing that began,
Mm.
kind of, I like to think of it as the consolation prize of
Yeah.
the Central Square or the C2 process, was that
Oh yeah.
the City Council just absolutely didn't act at all on C2, the
Yeah.
recommendations.
Yeah.
And then when the Normandy Twining people came by with the Mass and Main proposal, I wouldn't say that it breezed through, but I initially didn't think it would pass. But there was a zoning change to allow a relatively tall building in the Lafayette Square end of Central Square.
Right.
A lot of housing units, a lot of affordable housing units. But again, it's not something I would have originally expected. Now, just
Yeah.
because you change the zoning and permit something to happen doesn't mean it necessarily happens or that it happens quickly. It's just
So
that
what is
now
the
it can
status
happen.
of that?
Well, actually, I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I know some of the Normandy Twining's been rehabbing some of their other properties in the area.
I mean, has
they-
there been any construction over there?
No.
Oh.
What they did is not in the property that's going to become the tall building. There was a land disposition that settled just a few weeks back to sell the city alleyway, public alleyway, and they'll be basically it's a trade. It's a land swap more than anything
Okay.
else. But I'm curious to see whether, in fact, things will actually happen over this coming year. Because when it does start, I mean, it'll be somewhat disruptive. I mean, it'll be a big, prominent thing. There'll be a big hole in the ground and a lot of activity. And it'll be coupled with another project, too, which is the city, the area for, well, I guess we have to say the port now, has perennial drainage problems, especially around Pine Street, School Street, and around Cherry Street.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, very low-lying areas. And one of the parts of a solution to that is building a large underground storage tank. Sometimes they build them under the streets, like they did in the Agassiz neighborhood.
That does sound disruptive.
Curb to curb. Oh yeah, but the thing is that one of the things that is planned, just like they did up on where the Cambridge Library is, they have a large underground storage tank to take stormwater excess and temporarily store it before it can be pumped back into the system after the rain events. So they're planning to do that in at least portion of the parking lots that are behind the Mass and Main project.
They would be used.
Yep, and that was definitely a part of all the understandings with the city, is that there would be a way of doing that. What I learned the other day from the Commissioner of Public Works is that as part of that project, they have to get the stormwater out of there, and it has to get over to Mass Ave, and it has to get over the red line. And apparently the distance between the street level and the red line tunnel is only 4 feet.
Oh my
and they have to somehow blast away and squeeze through.
That's going to be an engineering nightmare.
Yeah, I think they can do it. They can do it, and the plans are in place how they're going to do it. But it'll be somewhat disruptive. Now, there's a piece of me worries, because I remember when whether people love it or hate it, the Holmes Family Trust did their project down at the corner, down in the heart of Central Square, and just when they were about to really get moving on that, and they'd excavated the site, there were lawsuits and delays, and we ended up with a big friggin' hole in the ground for like a year or more.
Really? Wow.
Yeah,
How soon I
and
forget.
every ounce of goodwill between the property owners and some of the neighborhood residents who'd been more cooperative was pretty much shot.
That's too bad.
So I seriously hope there aren't people planning things like lawsuits or petition campaigns or whatever. What's done is done. I mean, there was a 7-2 vote to permit something, and with the zoning change was an implication that this building or something pretty close to it was going to happen, and it should just happen. But
I hope so. Yeah.
But it'll certainly be a piece of the discussion or the politics of the coming maybe the next 6 months to a year, I imagine. So anyway, that's the Mass and Main project. I was checking out on the another thing that was it didn't begin this last council term, but it was the status of the Foundry building down in Rogers Street.
We touched on that last week, but
yeah,
really clear.
So the Cambridge Redevelopment Authority is pretty much the agency that now kind of rules the roost. They have a Foundry Advisory Committee that's going to come up with recommendations for programming.
So they've been meeting?
And I checked today, and in fact they put out a request for bidders. There are 5 qualified bidders now
that's good.
to take on the project. I won't
Sounds
necessarily
like progress.
one of which is actually Boston Properties, which is sort of the main developer for Kendall Square, but there are 4 others, including a group involving the Cambridge Innovation Center, Lincoln Properties, Pilot Development Partners, and I was actually scanning through all the proposals, and there's some very interesting ideas being worked there, but the delicate matter there is you need to come up with a solution for the Foundry building which generates income, which will then help to support all the nonprofit
that want to be part of it.
Yeah, which will be a part of it.
So what's the attraction for a developer?
Kendall Square is a big piece of it. There's so much
but
pressure.
What do they get out of it if it's going to be nonprofits in there? And I mean,
well, hopefully
it would work with someone for profit.
I think none of these 5 qualified bidders are going to do anything unless they can make sure that they're not going to lose their shirt on it.
Right, but I'm just curious what that would look like.
I don't know. I think it's also a kind of an interesting creative project that would be the feather in the cap of any one of the 5.
True. Maybe it would be something. Hey, look what we did here. And they'll be kinder to us and everything. Else.
No, I think it's a good thing to have in your resume.
Right. Right.
But
how did you find these? Did you
they're
go
actually
to the
up on
Cambridge Redevelopment?
Well, that's another story right there. I actually put it in as sort of my last one of my tag additions. Is that this amazing thing that happened over the last term or more, which was this complete, like the rising of the phoenix of the Cambridge Redevelopment Authority that came from just near death to becoming what's, I think, a pretty vital partner in making good things happen, and especially in that part of the city, but not exclusively in that part of the city. There's even been proposals for Central Square where the redevelopment authority may become the part. Maybe within the next 2 years, maybe the Vale Court property could end up being under the
So they're a separate,
control.
I think I asked
They're,
you
they're
this
kind
last
of an
week.
independent authority.
Independent, but, so they're
but-
not under community development?
Well,
Or they're sort
there are
of?
it's a 5-member board,
Yeah,
and 4 of the members of the board are appointed by the city manager. So the
but
city
is there
manager,
any paid staff?
and there are paid staff, and we know
Okay.
some of them
We
actually.
do?
Jason Dodd, for example.
Oh,
Yeah.
right,
See,
right,
they're-
who we want as a guest,
Yeah,
that would be a
they're-
wonderful
the,
guest.
the board
Okay.
members are wonderful.
Okay,
The staff people are qualified and energetic, and they've actually become a pretty essential player in things
so
right
again,
now.
where did you see these proposals online, through their site? They
It's
have their own site?
actually went through the Cambridge the CDD,
So you do go
Community
through
Development
community
Department,
development?
and then from there there's a link,
Okay.
and then from there, all
So
the.
just if you searched found rebuilding, you'd come up with this?
Yep,
Okay.
that's right. Yeah,
Good, all right.
definitely. And so I'm pretty excited to see that. So
Yeah.
that's something something
Yes.
to watch in the next
Yeah.
couple of years.
Good,
The
good, good.
degree, to what degree the city council tries to involve itself and get some sort of control over things, I don't think they
Hopefully
have.
they don't have
Well,
to, because it looks like it has some good.
This is pretty much, they've given
yeah.
giving control to the
Right.
authority, but
Good.
the authority has promised to check in and sort of take the temperature of the
Yeah.
political people to make sure they're not kind of just running off
Right.
on their own.
Okay,
I put that definitely as a real success story,
good,
and something to watch. Very
Right.
much something to watch.
okay,
Another thing that's something to watch is something that's in process is
Right.
the zoning of the Volpe site,
right.
Volpe Transportation Site, which has that beautiful white squirrel that I photographed
Oh, that's where that
on
was
Christmas
from.
Eve. A
Nice.
pure white squirrel, not an albino, but a pure
Wow.
white squirrel.
Huh.
But I think it's something like a 14-acre site. There's a chance that it could be redeveloped for both industry, open space, housing, and the reconstruction of a building for the Volpe Transportation Center.
But again, so it's a somewhat of a partnership or a relationship with the federal government?
Yeah,
It's
very
not
much.
right,
Yeah,
okay.
the deal is you have to build them a building.
Right.
And you do it out of the proceeds from what you do with the rest of the site.
Right,
Now,
seems very inviting to me.
it's very inviting, but the thing is that
Yeah.
once you started loading on the requirement, everybody, we want a lot of this, we want housing, we want open space, we want this, we want that.
Yeah,
It's actually reached the point now where it doesn't have enough support to even pass a zoning change to allow anything to happen.
that's a shame.
So, that I guess we'll have to call a failure of the current city council to resolve that. But maybe it was not something that could have been resolved. And
Yeah.
maybe we'll see. We'll see if some creativity emerges in the coming month or
Yeah.
two. My guess is it ends up being refiled. And then the real question is, does anything happen?
Yeah.
Or in the end of the process, do we squander the whole opportunity and we end up with the Volpe people just saying, well, we don't love our building, but we'll stay here for the next 50 years.
So was the
Thank you
crux
very
of
much."
it, was it housing versus commercial? Is that part of it?
You know,
Or
there's-
open space
oh, it-
versus
As
commercial?
they say, it's complicated.
Yeah, okay.
There was one
All right.
proposal that called for having a certain number of acres of open space, but
Right.
then as part of the Alexandria project, this Rogers Street open space was gifted to the city. So
Okay.
some people say, well, you should subtract that off of what you were going to do in the Volpe site.
Oh,
And
I
then
see.
some people say,
Yeah.
no, we
Yeah.
want all that
So
too.
a lot of
We
disagreement.
want to eat
Okay,
our cake and have it too.
yeah.
So
Compromise would be the order of the new year,
it
don't you think?
sure would.
Yeah.
It sure
An
would.
accommodation.
And I walked through that lot when I was
Yeah.
photographing squirrels the other
Yeah.
day. And it is huge when you're on the
Yeah.
and it's fenced off. So when
Yeah.
if you go the wrong way and you get stuck, you got to walk all the way around
Mhm.
because you can't even pass through it.
Yep.
So it's not great, and hopefully they can come up with something.
Yeah,
Another thing that was really big, in some circles over this term was, I guess most people think of it as sort of the Uber controversy,
the Uber phenomena,
but more generally, I guess we'd have to call it
the sharing economy.
the sharing economy.
Which is being faced by every city.
It's
global almost,
It is
yeah.
pretty much everywhere, and
Right.
nobody's really come up with
Nope.
an answer to whether this should be regulated, or if so, exactly how.
And this is a good example of having a regional or a state solution versus each city doing
I
their
hope
own
so.
thing.
And the state
You know?
legislature is taking some action,
Are they?
trying to
Yeah.
come up with kind of a right way to handle the sort of the emerging Uber phenomenon.
Right.
But it's one of those things that it has to be seen as in process. Maybe there'll be a city solution. Maybe it'll be a state solution that the city just implements.
Right.
But honestly, the status quo of taxi cabs that can drive a person to the airport but can't pick up a passenger, or a Boston cab takes you from the airport to
What do you
Cambridge.
mean they can't pick up a passenger?
Because it's intercity rules. A Cambridge cab cannot pick up in Boston. A Boston cab is not supposed to pick up in
and
Cambridge.
that's because of the
Yeah,
the
Ubers are not subject to any of
No,
these
obviously
rules.
not, right.
So they
okay.
need to just rewrite the rules.
Right. Also the
and,
cost of getting a cab, the medallion issue, all of that
checking
stuff. It's ridiculous.
the appropriateness of the drivers.
They basically had a fiefdom, and now it's being
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Right, yeah.
so, but it goes beyond just taxi cabs.
Oh,
you
yeah,
mentioned
sure.
earlier the whole Airbnb
Right,
phenomenon.
exactly.
Right. You know.
Because there you're getting into the city or
Yeah.
is not getting their taxes or
I'm
not
not-
getting their.
I don't want to rat anybody out
Yeah.
here, but the thing is, I know of some buildings that were
Yeah.
built.
Specifically to just do Airbnb.
No, they were
No?
built and they were supposed
Yeah.
to do, we're going to deliver this many housing units and this many affordable units. Well, I guess the affordable units may be in there, but nobody said that the housing
Oh.
units were actually going to be then treated as essentially hotel rooms, which are
right.
then being rented out on a kind of a quickie
Right.
basis
And a lot of
via
landlords
Airbnb.
that have existing properties are doing
Are
that
doing
because
it.
they can make more
Yeah.
money.
I heard there's a story done, is it in Brooklyn or somewhere in New York? I saw in the paper this morning of a woman who, it was a landlord got nailed by the city with this like a huge $100,000 fine, and now is basically wrote a bill to one of the tenants who apparently was enriching
my
herself by
Goodness.
Airbnb her apartment and renting it
Oh,
out.
right. You
and
have to put
making,
that in a lease now. You
Right.
do.
So
You have to
she's
put it in a lease. You
making a
cannot.
fortune off
Yeah,
it.
that
So
happened to someone I know, and
This
they
is,
put it in
it's
a
like
lease.
the Wild West
Right.
now. It's
Yeah.
it's unregulated. Well, I don't know if it's unregulated, but
It's unregulated by the city and state. I mean,
Yeah.
private property owners can regulate it if they
right.
want.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, honestly, I don't know. I think there's
Well,
certain
sure
things.
you
If you're
can.
running a rooming house, you're supposed to have a rooming house license. If it's effectively a
No, but
rooming house.
if you rented an apartment to 3 people and one of them decides they're going to go away, so they're going to rent their bedroom through
I think if
Airbnb. If you put it in your lease that you can't do that, you can't do that.
I know, but the
Just
thing
like
is that
subletting,
they-
you can't do.
Right, but the thing is that even the act of doing it, I think, is still a gray area of the law. You know.
I don't know.
You know, you are operating a business. If you're running a business out of a residential area.
Yeah, but if you signed a lease that said you're not going to
I
do
know,
it, then you're
I
breaking
know.
the law. Anyway,
I know it.
we
but-
don't have much time left. We should touch a little on the schools, just
We
a
can
little
touch a little bit on the
Yeah.
schools here. So, you know, I don't follow the schools nearly as much as
No,
I
and I don't
follow
anymore either
city
because my
council things.
daughter's out of school.
But
still,
certainly one of the things that's coming up, it's actually, I think, has it already happened? They finally did finish the Putnam Avenue School.
oh, I was over there actually helping. They brought the kids over for 3 days before vacation started
Yeah.
to introduce them to the school, and I helped with because they're doing composting there.
Yeah.
Of course, we're using styrofoam. So
Yep.
here we have a green school. We're using
And the
styrofoam.
little girls that live in my upstairs apartment, they're going to be going there.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, so they
so-
did start for 3 days and then, so
So
it
this
has
is a-
opened,
this
but
is
the workers
there are-
were all over the place.
There's like 4 middle schools or hybrid
There
middle
will
schools.
be, 4 upper schools, but
Upper
one,
schools.
is going to be renovated as of September, so those kids.
Right. So I think
It's the Harrington Street School, or
right. So
the
it's
Cambridge Street School.
basically the King School was
Right.
first in the line, and next in line is the
Right.
old, what we call the old Harrington School.
Right, which has been
which is
housing
now the
the
King Open program.
King Open, will move to Kennedy Longfellow, a lot of shuffling around.
But then
Right.
who's going to move into the Longfellow building, which is across the street from my house? Because that's been the swing space for a lot of the programs.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah. So anyway, they'll be doing the shuffle.
Right.
So that's as far as the capital plan. That's definitely a big thing.
Yes.
There was there's a brand new school superintendent.
Oh, right,
Dr.
yes.
Kenneth Salim,
That's
who
right.
was superintendent in the Weymouth schools.
Oh, you,
I
okay,
think
there
still
we go.
is, and
Okay.
and there's sort of a transition now. Jeff Young is still superintendent, but
Until when?
I think
till
it's
the
till the
end of
middle of the
June?
year. Yeah,
Okay.
and then Kenneth Salim will take over. So
Right.
that's definitely will be a big piece of what's happening on the school side, is to see
Right.
if there are any changes
Right.
in administration
Right,
that go
right,
with that.
right.
Often there is. Big, somewhat controversial vote. It was a 4-3 vote, I believe, it happened.
Oh, on the testing.
last week on standardized testing, where the city is going to go with some sort of hybrid involving the park, PARCC.
And then the old
I forget what
MCAS,
that thing,
right,
and the
yeah.
old MCAS.
Yeah.
There's been letters to the local papers about, the outrage of all this and why we should be out getting rid of standardized testing. I don't share that belief myself,
Yeah,
but it was a 4-3 vote, and anytime you do something on a 4-3 vote in this town, it means there's going to be a continuing conversation.
right, which will be at the start of the new year with a new school committee member.
Right. So that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Actually, 2 new school committee members.
Oh, two new, right, it will
Yeah.
be, right, Emily Dexter and
And Monica Bowman.
Monica Bowman.
Yeah. So anyway,
Right.
that's what's coming up.
So-
There's a lot more we could say.
Yeah, we'll hopefully have a little
Certainly.
more on that.
And we will
And
just-
maybe invite, we would have had Patty Nolan, but
Yeah, we had a
Maybe
few
next time,
invitations
yeah.
for some at least one city
if
council.
you're watching this and want to be a guest,
Yeah,
just contact Robert, rwinters.com.
We're gonna rotate everybody through here.
Right.
Not everybody, but we're gonna get a lot of people,
Yeah, just to-
elected officials.
Just not the two of us.
Yeah, and anyway, that's coming in the coming months. So
Okay.
anyway, on